This is Infants on Thrones, the philosophies of men mingled with humor. We are the Quorum.
Welcome back to Infants on Thrones. I'm Glenn Ostland, and today we continue our conversations with the past winners of the last listener essay contest. Today, Randy and I sit down with Pete, who wrote an essay about correspondence with his father, a letter that his father wrote to him, and then he wrote a letter back to his father. I will include that essay at the end of today's interview, and I'll say right from the start, and we talk about this, but my feelings about Pete changed as a result of talking with him. You know, I had certain impressions when I heard the listener essay. It kind of reminded me of ways that I was like way too hard on my dad and people. And so I was kind of harsh on Pete when I first heard it. I'll be honest. Sorry about that, Pete. But then getting to know him, oh my gosh, like his background, his story, I repent. I must repent. And so I apologize to Pete, and I apologized as we were having this conversation, but oh man, the stuff that you've gone through, Pete, you're a trooper, you're a real trooper, you're a survivor, you're awesome, you're great. So Pete, Randy, me, a conversation happening now.
Turn my volume up.
All right, do you have the mic set up? Because it sounds like... the mic on your computer that's
right, like maybe it's not running through the Blue Yeti.
Oh, well I just, this is just for looks. It's actually fake. No, I'm just kidding.
Tap it. Nope. Yeah, so it's not running through. Randy, good diagnosis, Randy.
Very astute.
I'm a computer genius.
That's my job.
There we go. Now it's
what
going.
A difference. Holy shit.
Randy puts the ass in astute.
Put the ass in a lot of things.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what that means, and I don't know
I don't know.
Explain it to me either.
It's not as funny if I have to explain the joke. I've been told.
Oh, yeah. Sometimes it's funny for you when you do explain it, though.
That's my stereotype.
Cool.
Hi guys, it's good to talk to you.
Hi. So do you go by Pete or Peter?
Pete. Yep. Peter has too many alternate meanings.
It does.
Yeah.
Did you get a lot of that as a kid?
Yeah. I mean, there wasn't a lot of opportunities for kids to pick on me at homeschool. But
oh my God, we got to talk about that. We got to take a deep dive.
Was that in your essay that you were homeschooled? I don't remember.
Yes, it was in his. It was in the very first part. He said, to give myself a background. The most offensive thing I found was that your parents are anti-vax.
Oh yeah, and anti-fluoride.
Oh my God, there's like few things that are as robustly proven at increasing the public health than fluoride in the water.
Oh, I hear you. I'm a full-on skeptic as well, Randy. I think you've identified yourself as a skeptic, isn't that right?
That's my favorite label.
Yeah.
He puts the skep in skeptic.
What?
It's not working.
No, I think he put the septic in skeptic.
Wow, yeah, you and your scatological jokes, man.
Oh man. Yeah.
Should we start with that, Glenn? I mean, because like the very well-earned perception. I mean, because what is it? Maybe you know, Pete, the numbers, but I believe it's something north of 90% of children being homeschooled are for religious reasons, and there are a certain percentage of people that just don't think that the public school is good enough, and they actually can provide a better education.
Yeah,
but
I think I don't know the numbers, but that sounds right. I've got cousins, and I've known people who are homeschooled because they tend to group together.
Was this like a extended family kind of a thing? Was this like something maybe your grandparents preached?
No, actually, it was just something my parents came up with. My cousins got into it after us, because apparently they like the idea. My dad's sister.
You've got a great voice, Pete.
Seriously,
you've got a
radio
great voice for this, man.
Thanks. I've got a face for radio too.
Yeah.
So
your face is just fine.
Thanks, Randy. That means a lot. What was I talking about?
Homeschool
And your parents.
Oh, yeah. So my cousins got into it after us, but they did a much better job of it. Sometime around the time when I was like, I don't know, I want to say 12, my parents full on stopped. So it was basically up to myself from there on.
So what from like junior high, like you entered public school system at the age of 8th grade?
No, I entered public school at the age of 18 when I went to college.
I thought you said they stopped when you were 12.
They did. I got like zero schooling for.
Like you were
years.
You were still kept at home, but they weren't like teaching you anything.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, actually, I was getting into things faster than my friends, because I had a decent number of friends from church and scouts and stuff like that. But so I could gauge how well I was doing by talking about what we were doing in school. So when I got into algebra and stuff before them, I was feeling pretty confident. But shortly after that, they started passing me, and then without any real support, I just ended up playing video games pretty much all day long.
Wow.
What games?
What games? Mostly Nintendo, Super Nintendo, and 64. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure I could beat anybody at GoldenEye.
GoldenEye.
Yeah.
That's kind of like that's like a James Bond one that kind of has like capture the flag type.
That does have it. Yeah, capture the flag was in there. There's all kinds of game modes. But yeah, I got really good at video games. Real good.
And what was your mom doing during the day?
I don't know exactly what happened. She did. So I don't know. Did we want to take this in chronological order or something? Because
you be the captain of the ship, man.
All right.
It's your story.
So the impetus for why my parents homeschooled us is what they told us was that they didn't want to unteach us what the public school system would teach us. And things like
evolution.
Evolution, especially. My parents, my mom primarily thought that dinosaurs were placed as a test. That the universe is only 6,000 years old or whatever.
So God, purposely placed giant bones of T-Rexes
or had placed.
just
maybe he didn't do it directly. He just had it happen.
It's like, all right, I'm testing whether or not you will, believe logic and reason. Like evidence right in your face.
Exactly.
Over what exactly I tell
you. He's sitting up there on Colab, just going, "This will fuck with him."
So they didn't even try to assimilate, well, obviously they didn't. They're obviously younger creationists.
Mm-hmm. In fact, we had a Kleonskousen books on our bookshelf. I don't know if you probably
5,000 year leap.
Yeah, the first 2,000 years and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So summarize some of that, because that came up. We were having a conversation last night. We were recording the McConkie
Seven Heresies.
Yeah, number 3 and 4, and you asked Mike about the Kleonskousen, and I know the name, but I don't really know like the material. Like what are the Skousen-esque views of things that are from
first you have to start with his political views, because he was from the John Birch Society.
Okay.
So right. he was highly aligned with Ezra Benson in his belief in the communist plot to bring on the New World Order
with the Negroes.
with the colored people meeting guerrilla warfare in the streets to overthrow democracy.
Yeah, their word, not mine.
Right.
Well, that was actually a polite term back then.
Yeah,
that was doing them a favor.
Oh my god.
That's his political views. He's John Beck. What's his name? Beck.
Glenn Beck?
Glenn Beck. Yeah, John Beck. Didn't John Beck write a classic American novel?
I don't know, but
anyway,
you don't.
Glenn
it's fine with me that you don't associate the name Glenn with Glenn Beck. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that at all.
So
I can't think of any other Glens besides Glenn Beck, to be honest with you.
Yeah, me either. Glenn Beck was highly influenced by Cleon Skousen's writings politically. But give us an overview of Cleon Skousen's theology.
He believed in a literal interpretation of Old Testament stuff. That being that there were 7 dispensations. And every millennium was a dispensation. So essentially we're in the last one now, or anyway.
Before the actual millennium.
Yes. Oh, sure. Yeah. That's like the 8th millennium, or whatever.
That's a supernatural millennium where lots and lots of temple work will be done.
Yeah. Obviously I don't think that there's a lot of people holding logical consistency to anything that he wrote, but so like Adam and Eve were literally here 6,000 years ago, and I it's been a long time since I've read any of his books, but it was very just fundamentalist and everything is literal.
Was this your homeschool experience? These are the things that you were taught?
Not specifically. Those were just books that were available on our bookshelves. There was a lot of theology taught. My mom taught us that Jesus was inspiring the founding fathers. When you mentioned Glenn Beck, he definitely agrees with that. Oh, yeah. That Jesus kind of co-wrote everything in the original Constitution, which
including the 3/5 clause.
Yeah, the 3/5 compromise. That's real nice of him. Also, entirely leaving out women. Just half plus or minus the population. So, I mean, everything. We didn't do a lot of any of the sciences. No real geography or geology or anything like that. But history was one of my mom's favorites, and she would always include some sort of religious lesson to everything.
So everything was through the opaque lens of the Mormon worldview.
Mm-hmm. And that was true of them the whole time I knew my mom. She died last month, but
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah. Wow. Sorry.
Yeah. That was basically who they were. They didn't have any other lenses. The only way they could interpret the world was through the LDS viewpoint. That's part of the reason why after my wife and I left the church that they had such a problem with us.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
I mean, they it seems like they sort of ran a tight ship. Apparently your mom kind of slipped from age 12 to 18 for you.
Yeah. So my mom had a lot of health issues. I think she had diabetes for a long time that was undiagnosed. And she thought she had things like chronic fatigue syndrome and all kinds of other things. And eventually she came down with something called, hang on. I don't remember the medical term, but it has to do with the fact that her lungs weren't providing her body enough oxygen. Let's see. So, so she got sick. She thought she had chronic fatigue syndrome. She was basically bedridden for a few years, and that's basically why homeschooling stopped. Because my dad, he still had to work, so we were just kind of left to our own devices.
What did your dad do?
He was an electrical engineer. He's
Okay.
retired now.
I suspected that he was an attorney because of the way that you framed your arguments against him. That reminded me of the way that I framed my arguments against my attorney dad. So
Yeah.
I was wrong.
Well, my mom actually was going to law school. She didn't ever finish, but she did go to law school. So maybe that's where some of that came from.
That's crazy. She allowed herself to be exposed to the world, to learn different ways of seeing things and rules of evidence in a courtroom, stuff like that.
Well, I mean, you can see why she might have been a little bit worried, because eventually when I did go to college, I took an anthropology class, and they were like, yeah, when people crossed the Bering Strait and got to America at 10,000 years ago, I'm all, hang on. 10,000 years ago, you say? That doesn't square with what I know to be true.
It was actually more than like 15,000 years ago. But
the numbers have changed a little bit.
Where did you go, Pete?
What's that?
Where were you going to college?
ISU, Idaho State University.
Okay. I was wondering if it was like a
Idaho
BYU
Falls, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I went to Rick's for 1 year, so we were just like an hour east.
Yeah. The only time I actually went to Rick's while it was still Rick's was at a merit badge powwow. They had lots of weird rules. Like if you wanted to swim in the pool, you had to use their swim trunks that they provided.
Yeah. Welcome to BYU.
Oh my gosh.
BYU, you had to just so they could check to see if you're clean shaven. In order to play basketball, you had to check out their tiny little shorts.
Oh god.
Yeah. So this was the 90s when long shorts were coming in, but BYU had shorts from the 80s.
Yeah. Boy, I blocked that. I was not allowed to play an intramural basketball game once because I had stubble.
Yeah, they will not let you play.
No, somebody actually came out once and they looked at my hair was over the top of my ears.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, they've got referees for that.
Jeez, yes.
That's so ridiculous.
The other team shot free throws.
Because you had stubble?
Yeah, all right. Yeah, because the hair was over my ears. Flagrant. Disregard for the propriety.
Yeah, so your essay, apparently when you made the essay, obviously your mom was still alive and your dad was worried about her health condition so your dad made it through the heart surgeries and all that?
Yeah, this would have been his third heart surgery. The first two were open heart, and this one was not. They just went in and replaced the valve going through his veins. And apparently this letter got sent right before he went in.
Oh, nice. Very nice.
I didn't get it until after he had already come out and was recovering. So, and after I got it, I was like, oh, that's really... I didn't really like the whole tone of his, obviously, because I gave him a 5-page response.
A dissertation on epistemology and ontology and morality and ethics.
I just had to touch on a few important topics. That's all.
We'll talk more about that later, but okay, so let's before we get into the letter, I want a little more background.
Okay.
So you come out of this. Were you even taught basic science? I mean, how were you able to take the ACT?
I did I bought a book that was a GED prep book.
So you were self-taught to prep for the college entrance exams.
Yeah. And actually, I didn't do great, but I did pass, and I got my ACT. I think I got somewhere in the low 20s. It's nothing to brag about. But my real struggles with school started once I started college. The GED was relatively easy. The ACT, I could have done better, but I got it good enough to get into college. But I had no study skills. I had no ability to take notes or to anticipate what would be on a test. Or I also didn't have any just the basic things, like, you know how sometimes on those college tests the answer will be in one of the questions further on down. these are things that just didn't occur to me ever because
Because you didn't take any tests. You don't have any test-taking skills.
Right,
Shocker.
right. And my first paper that I turned in college, the professor handed it back and went, "You should go to the writing lab before I score this." And
redo it.
Yeah.
What
So
a
I worked
generous.
He was generous, but I think he just didn't want to give me like a 20 or whatever on it, because it was bad. It was bad. When I look back on it, I'm like, I get it, and I'm glad that he did, because I worked really hard, and I think I got my writing a lot better. But yeah, it was really a struggle at first.
All right. So how did your siblings do with this same incubator that they came out of?
Well, my older siblings, like I said, they stopped when I was about 12. So that means my nearest brother would have been 15, 16. So he was pretty much getting ready to go to college by then. So
you're the youngest, or?
I'm the fifth of seven. I think you are too. Isn't that right?
Oh yeah. I'm the fifth of seven.
Yeah. So my younger two brothers, they didn't do quite so well. One of them never even started going to college. He's been working high school grad jobs so far. The youngest, though, he with a lot of help was able to get through college. So we kind of helped him through in a lot of ways.
Okay. So you did you go on a mission?
I did not. Actually, there's a funny story.
Oh, there's your problem right there.
That was part.
Now I get it. Now I know why you're such an apostle. Did the other brothers go on missions? Like, are you the only one that didn't?
So in my family, there were 7 children. My sister was the oldest. She died when I was 14. Then I have 5 brothers, so there's 6 boys, and not a single one went on a mission. I was actually in the process of filling out my paperwork when I just decided that I couldn't live with the fact of going on a mission being a serial masturbator.
Hey. I feel you, man.
I always just used milk.
You're so gross, Glenn.
I couldn't go on a mission and doing that. So I was just like, I'm too much of a sinner. I'm just gonna not go. And so in the space of 2 weeks, I went from somebody who had never done anything wrong intentionally against my moral code that I can recall until that point. And then I went and I drank, I smoked marijuana, I had sex, all in the space of just a few weeks. So
little rum springer.
Yeah. It actually kind of felt kind of like that. Is that what the Amish people do?
Yeah, they know that this life is hard, and so when you come of age as a 18-year-old man, they send you out into the world to go have fun, and then come back and then decide if you want to stay or go back into the world. I actually find that kind of an endearing point of doctrine for the Amish.
Yeah,
Mormons do not have that.
No.
How did you feel? Having been, because obviously the masturbation was serious enough for you that you felt like you weren't worthy to go on a mission. So then, did you just feel like I might as well just flush my whole life down the toilet and enjoy this? Is that kind of mindset?
That's kind of the thing.
Wow.
Because okay, so let's jump back a few years again. When I was sometime around 13 or 14, my mom had caught me masturbating.
Oh my God!
Right?
To a Leon Skousen book.
How do you not do it with a locked door or with? I'm just kidding.
It was exciting.
I've just never been caught masturbating, even by my wife.
You're a better man than I am, Randy.
I'm just more afraid of shame.
And there was so much shame. In fact, after a long and difficult conversation where my mom shed a lot of tears, they bought me the Miracle Forgiveness.
Oh, that's great.
Which is really where all the guilt came from.
Yeah, because then you thought, if I keep masturbating, I'm going to turn gay.
Yeah. No, first you do circle jerks, then you become gay. Which was like, it was something that was always on my mind when I was in high school is I want to get together with my buddies, my football buddies, and get in a circle and jerk each other off.
Oh gosh. Isn't that what everybody wants to do? I mean,
I read that on my mission because my mission president, I had confessed to him that I was masturbating, so he gave me miracle of forgiveness.
Oh.
And I remember reading that part going, who does this? People do this? They get in circles and they jerk each other off?
I that's probably not a thing. That probably is.
Oh, there's definitely a thing. I mean, everything happens.
Everything
you could think of happens somewhere.
Yeah, and there's a video of it on the internet.
Yeah. So you get caught masturbating by your mom, and so how does that tie into not going on a mission?
Oh, because of all the guilt that I felt for that, and the fact that I couldn't break that habit. So I essentially felt like I wasn't worthy. So I was just like, well, what's the difference between not worthy and very not worthy? And I'm like, doesn't feel like a lot. So, I think that's the problem. When you're working with absolutes, bad is just as bad as every other bad.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's no scale anymore when you're that extreme. So that's how I felt. So I was just like, well, okay, if I'm going to have to spend some time in spirit prison, I might as well have a good story.
Well, I mean, when you think about the Mormon doctrine, and when they put murder right next to just having sex, then yeah, I mean, bad is bad. It's all bad.
Yeah.
What's the difference?
Yeah.
And what's worse than both of those is just not believing in the church.
Yeah, because that's sons of perdition.
That's denying the Holy Ghost, and that's worse than murder or having sex.
That's right. Outer darkness for all of us. So
I got to ask you this though. Yeah. You're the only one in your family that left the church.
That's not true. Most of us left for at least some period of time. My sister, she smoked a drink before she died. She was not
smoked. Oh, I thought you said smoked a drink. I'm like,
yeah. Oh yeah. It's crazy.
She smoked and drank before she died.
Yeah, she was smoking and drinking, and she was not going to church or anything like that. So it wasn't that she was necessarily disbelieving in the church; she just wasn't practicing. And I don't know exactly her views on theology when she died. But then my oldest brother, he is Mormon again. He spent a long time, a good I'd say 15 years or more.
Is his wife named Sarah?
Yeah.
Okay. Because you didn't name the brother, you just named his wife.
Yeah. Okay. So I feel like this is an important thing for me to put out there to everybody. I apologize for the format of my essay. I realized that it was weak and that it wasn't put together exactly very well. The format was kind of foreign to me, this whole listener essay thing. I promise that in the future, my next one will be much better. So anyway,
what, you won second place. Who are you apologizing to?
There were some feedback from people, which I totally agree with, that the format was messy. And I could have put it together much better. We were in the process of moving from Idaho to Oregon, and we had lots of different things going on. And Glenn wouldn't extend the period of the competition for me.
Wait a minute. If I remember this right, you sent it to me in October.
Are you saying
right?
I can't blame this on you?
No. You sent it to your listener essay was one of the first ones that I got that was like, I'm going to start doing listener essays again and asking for people. Am I remembering that right?
Well, I'd sent that to you a long time ago, and you finally went through the emails apparently, and then sent it to me going, you should turn this into an essay.
Oh, okay. So it was longer than just October 2017.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nobody goes through emails anymore in infants.
But anyway, yeah, once you sent that to me, I was like, all right, I guess I will. And so you guys haven't done a listener essay contest in a long time, right?
Well, that was the first time we did it as a contest. We used to do it just where we'd have them and then we'd have a conversation like we're having with you right now. And we just got burned out with it and stopped. So.
Okay. Yeah. So I wasn't familiar with the format at all. So I understand it much better. That Delaney Darko had it down.
Yeah.
So I've got some people that I can really learn from.
Yeah.
But yeah. So what were we talking about before I
Well,
went?
the question I was working towards is like, it just seems strange that you had such a tight, religious, strict upbringing, and not one boy went on a mission. So it seems weird that your dad would have that kind of perspective in the email he sent to you. He sent to everybody, but he just put a couple of changes in yours,
Yeah,
which really upset you. And I understand that. It's like you're trying to make this special. It's like, come on, Dad.
well, but it was special because he was saying especially you when he sent especially you to every one of my living siblings.
Yeah,
so.
It wasn't special at all.
No,
but I'm just really surprised that because you didn't finish going through the history of the church with the rest of the family. Like how many are still in the church out of the 7?
Oh, okay. So we've gone over my sister was not. My oldest brother spent most of his time not
Sarah's husband.
Yeah. Sarah's husband. Yes, for those who are keeping track. And he is now back in the church, and they are going to the temple and all that stuff. And the next oldest brother, he is what you might call a staunch atheist, kind of the in-your-face kind. Then after him is also an atheist.
So this sounds like a total backfire, this whole homeschooling thing.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. But okay, so I don't know what it is, but I feel like one thing that I did learn at homeschool was critical thinking skills. I just hadn't applied them to religion until I hit college, and someone had given me a piece of evidence to evaluate, and that's when things really started to unravel for me. So yeah, I think that that's the same with most of my brothers, and I think that as far as my oldest brother, I suspect that he is only Mormon because he lives in Idaho Falls, and it is predominantly Mormon, and it's easier to get along with people. They did have a problem for a long time as not practicing Mormons, with their children not being able to get friends and stuff like that. So
okay. The only reason I'm bringing all this up is because just by going by your essay, my impression of it was that you were the only one that was out of the church, and he had sent this mass letter to all the believers, and only changed it for you because you were the one non-believer. That's why I was just trying to clear that up. But it sounds like your parents' grand experiment failed miserably as far as from a Mormon perspective.
Yeah. So 2 out of the 7 go to church.
Wow.
So.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. It really didn't work out.
Do you think there's a direct connection between that, or is it just a series of coincidences that made that happen?
I think that, yeah, I definitely think it's connected because we were so fundamentalist that we all felt strongly when we would sin that it made us, it made it so that we were no longer worthy to do things, including taking the sacrament and doing all kinds of things like that. So we would when it came time for us to go on missions, I think that none of us felt worthy. So, and that's what caused it. And it was the fact that, like, most people know, apparently, I don't know this for a fact, but I know that my friends growing up that were all in public school, they all probably masturbated. I never saw, but they just understood that it was okay to lie about it.
Yeah.
Or to, I don't know, or that you could still go and still do it. I don't know.
It's so sad to me that parents, and not just your parents, because I think a lot of parents do this to one degree or another, but they put conditions on the kids for acceptance and love, and like if you do this, then you'll be worthy.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't do this, or if you do this thing you're not supposed to do, then you won't be worthy. And like, their hearts are in the right place. They're really trying to protect you. They're thinking we're going to keep you on the straight and narrow path. And what they end up doing is just creating, like you said, this rigidity that it doesn't
It's destined for failure.
Yeah. There's not a lot of room for error in there, and life is messy, and you're going to get messy, and you're not prepared for it. I'm guessing from what
I used a Kleenex. I didn't get messy.
That's still messy. Sorry, still messy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really messy when your mom walks in.
Oh,
Yeah.
gosh.
That's horrifying.
like a moist towelette or something like that. It was better than like a,
Oh God, I use a lot of socks.
oh yeah, right. Yes.
Yeah.
Used.
Yeah, that's a sign that I masturbate if I'm walking around with one sock.
Like on your foot or in your hand or what?
No, just the one sock on my foot that I didn't take off because I used the other sock.
Yeah.
Women don't have to worry about that with masturbation. They don't have to worry about the mess.
That's a good point. That's unfair.
Yeah. It's totally unfair, man. God. It sucks being a white, straight male.
Oh, in America?
In America.
Oh, it's the worst. It's the worst. Women really have it good though.
All right. Yeah. Yeah. So let's get into the essay. Do you want to take it from here, Glenn?
No.
I didn't think so. You're back there eating your fucking popcorn that everybody can hear you eating.
No, because I'm muting it.
You're talking with it in your mouth, man.
All right. It's not popcorn. It's little crackers from Trader Joe's, and then just a bunch of shit I dip it in.
Trader Joe's.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you get this letter from your dad, and it's pretty much a classic letter that you would get from a believing parent.
Mm-hmm.
We can get into the not being personalized, pretending to be a personalized thing later, but it really pushed. And there was so let's get into the incident that kind of set the tone of your response. You have Sarah's husband and Sarah causing some kind of kerfuffle. What was the kerfuffle?
Okay. So we used to hang out at their house weekly, at least. We would go and we would just, hang out, play Phase 10, normal stuff. But our kids would always get blamed for everything. So after a while, we made it a habit of always being around where the kids were, so they couldn't be blamed for something that they didn't do.
So your kids were kind of being painted as like a bad influence.
Breaking things, all kinds of stuff, which, they probably did break some things, which was totally fine. But it became kind of a poisonous relationship with them. When we would come over, she would take us to the closet where she hid all of the good toys and be like, these are the toys I put away, so your kids don't break them.
Oh my God. That would be pushing a button for me.
For about the last few years of actually hanging out with them, I would plead with my wife to just be like, let me just tell her how I really feel. That's all I want to do is just, be honest with her. And she's like, no, that would be good. So anyway, one time, the final time we were hanging out at their house, we were playing, my brother and I, me and John, were playing video games downstairs while the kids were playing on a pool table. Everything seemed to be going fine. Nothing extreme happened. And then like 2 or 3 days later, we get a text saying, "Hey, your kids broke a pull cue." And I was like, well, I was down there with them. I think I would have heard a pull cue snap. I really don't think it was them. And, it was 3 days later. So it just didn't seem probable. Anyway, I was just like, I don't think they did. And then eventually she blew up, said we were calling her a liar. And it turned into a huge thing. And we essentially haven't talked in, I want to say 5 years or more now.
So it really didn't have anything to do with the church. It was just,
it was a pull cue.
okay.
But you're kind of happy that happened, right?
Yeah.
Because you didn't want to have to keep going over there and all of that stuff.
Yeah, it was the pull cue that broke the camel's back, but it was
Nice.
really glad. I was really glad that it happened in a lot of ways, but in some other ways it got really weird. So I would want to say like a year after the incident, D-Day as I call it. We go over there trying to straighten things out, and I feel like we're having a good conversation. And Sarah comes into the room and sits down, and she goes, "How do you think it feels to have to tell your kids that everybody hates them, and that's why they don't want to come over to your house?" And so
she sounds like a horrible person, man.
That's not for me to
just
judge.
like axe to grind against your kids. Like, good riddance. Jeez.
Yeah, we find it validating when people around her think that she's insane as well. But that's beside the point. Anyway, so people didn't really like spending time at their house. They would rather go other places like our house to hang out.
Well, why don't you take those people over to her house and say, these are the people that like to come to my house instead of your house? And because that's what she was doing with you and the toys. Here are the toys, the good toys that I'm not going to let your shitty kids play with. I just wanted you to know that they're here and your kids are shit.
Oh my God.
Right?
I couldn't do that. I couldn't.
But before the kid kerfuffle, like what were the, like, are you close with that brother?
I was not. No. We would go over there because, we were the only family that lived near each other.
Okay. And were there like, what were the adult conversations like?
For the most part, with my brother, we're fine. We would talk about programming and things. We're both programmers. And we would talk about science, and he'd occasionally bring up sports, but I don't know a damn thing about that.
What?
Sorry. But what you might call an indoor kid.
I mean, the reason why I'm bringing that up is because in your essay, you kind of made it sound like, look, I'm not going to be treated like shit because I'm a non-believer. And I'm wondering, where's the...
So it wasn't because I was a non-believer. It's because my parents would constantly beseech us to go and hang out with John and Sarah some more, and to just apologize, just bite the bullet, let them have what they need, but you guys need to be friendly and talking and stuff. And I'm like, I'm not putting myself or my kids into that situation anymore, is kind of what I was saying with that part of the essay. Just because it really was a stressful thing. Every single time I went over there, I just dreading the conversations. Sarah, she had said some things like, when I was going to college, she had actually said something like I wasn't smart enough to go to college or whatever, which my brother, John, was nice enough to apologize for her for. I never heard her apologize about that though. Anyway, she would constantly try and take digs at us and at our children to our face while we were there. And the most I was allowed was sarcasm. So, which is kind of a first language for me. So.
All right. So, let's go with, your dad's, email. Before you found out it was a generic email, just kind of run through your thoughts and feelings when you first read that.
Okay. When I got that email and I read through it, my first thoughts was that it was very condescending, and that the whole tone really didn't sit well with me. It felt like being talked down to like a child, and that was kind of frustrating. I already said condescending, so I guess that was redundant. And we had kind of talked to them previously about religion. Not a lot, just like, hey, we're doing our own thing. We don't want you preaching to our kids. That was a huge deal to my mom when
that was happening.
Yeah. So my daughters, when they were around 8, my parents noticed that we weren't preparing them for baptism. My older 2, and she had started talking to them about like baptism and religion and Jesus and all that stuff.
Would that have even like, cause like I left the church when my youngest 2 were like, one was a sunbeam and one was a nursery.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't even have a clue about Jesus or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Had your kids gone to church long enough to know what the fuck she was talking about?
Yeah. So the older 2 actually did go to church all the way up until, I want to say, Kylie, the oldest, was 7. And we stopped going right around then.
Okay. So they were pretty fresh out of it.
Yeah. So, and when my mom started preaching to them, I kind of sent her, because we had talked to our kids. They had babysat our kids one time, or they took them away to go to a movie. That's what it was. They took the kids on a granddaughter date, which I thought was great. But apparently they were constantly preaching to them religious stuff. And I was just like, if you want a relationship with the kids, that's fine. I just feel like the religious upbringing of my children is my responsibility. So I don't think you guys should be doing that. And then my mom replied with, I guess I'll get to know my children in the afterlife. So it was a bit of a strong response, I thought.
How's she going to get to know them when she's in the celestial and they're in the terrestrial or telestial?
She'll have to go down and visit and do her missionary work to my kids.
That's true, because there's visitation rights down. It just doesn't go up.
Yeah. Just my kids can never go to grandma's house in the celestial kingdom.
Right.
I mean, and who knows? Maybe they can be redeemed in spirit prison. But yeah.
So you had that, and then you felt like your dad was condescending and talking down to you, and which he was, but to me, it still was just a very typical Mormon like perspective. Like it was so boilerplate, believing Mormon.
I agree.
Where it's like, yeah, I don't know.
I agree, but I've come to a point, I think, where if we treat their views as though they deserve extra care than other people's, like let's say an atheist, if their views deserve more respect or whatever, then we're actually acknowledging that they have some kind of legitimacy that we don't. He's putting those views out there. I feel like it's fair to respond.
I feel so. I'll just give my opinion. I feel like that's totally valid, but probably more apt or better applied when you're talking about siblings. If we're talking about just family, siblings, cousins, that kind of thing. But when you're talking about a guy who's not long for this world, it just doesn't. I just don't see I don't understand the point of like trying, because there's no chance that they're going to change their mind at this point. And I guess I'm kind of tipping my hand on my opinion of your letter, of your email, but
I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Well, I have a very different view of it now after listening to this story than I did just your essay. So I'm glad we're having this conversation, because it just sounds like you were raised in an environment where there wasn't a lot of effort made at loving each other. Like I think that's what you're saying, Randy, is that it's not that loving of a response to an elderly father, but man, the shit you had to go through, I don't blame you at all for being like, yeah, Dad, you're going to throw this out here. I'm going to throw it right back at you and I'll do it better.
Yeah. Well, and I don't want to play the victim card or anything. I want to, though, emphasize that, yeah, I don't think that we had a very loving upbringing.
It was about rules, following rules. That the priority was on that, not on the kids. And like, what a wedge that becomes in people's relationships. Like, I'm sorry if I'm being too hard on this. It's kind of heartbreaking to me as I'm listening to this.
Was there much intimacy with you and your dad, like personally,
No.
growing up?
No. So when I was born, my dad was going to college, and he was going to college for up until I was saying my first words, and then he was working super long days. So he was never really around up until, well, even when he was working from home. Sometime around when I was about 10, he started working from home, but he was always in his office with the door shut. So it wasn't, we didn't really have a relationship. And the relationship I did have with even my mom, it was better when I was younger, but then it kind of deteriorated when she was all bedridden and needed us to get everything for her. I felt like the relationship kind of fell apart when I was probably early teens.
Wow. Okay.
So,
yeah, it's important to understand the background to get a good feel for, why you responded the way you did.
Sure.
So that's a good point, Glenn.
I feel like it is accurate when I did get some feedback saying that I was heartless in my response. But I don't feel like I was heartless in the sense that I didn't care about how my dad would take all of the stuff that I had said. I was heartless in the sense that I was trying to be dispassionate. I was just trying to be calculated and honest and
precise
and precise.
Clear. and because you were raised in this environment where it's like, here are the rules. Let me show you where they are. Here, you can go here, you can here, but you can't go here. And you're taking exactly that approach in your response to your dad.
Well, but also I'm taking a perspective of efficacy. And I think he stopped at the point where you called the church immoral. What were the three like really critical adjectives you used for the church? Immoral.
I don't recall the exact words, but I did say that it was full of untruth and groupthink.
Yeah. So you basically attacked the church right then and there. He's going to go into retrenchment mode. And I don't think he read anything after that.
You know what? You're probably right. That was towards the end of the letter, if I recall. So,
no, it was like 2/3 through.
Oh, okay.
So there was still a lot of like lessons in epistemology, and after that, and morality,
and,
and the lever trope that people love to throw in there. Like if you do nothing, you would be thrown in jail for murder.
Mm-hmm.
Well, why isn't God considered a murderer? Problem of evil stuff.
Yeah.
None of that stuff is going to stick.
I agree.
But I'm sure it felt good because Glenn loves to make fun of my resignation letter, where I basically felt like I was writing this letter to McConkie himself, not McConkie, to Packer.
Right.
Like really, I in my mind, and if you read the letter, it sounds like a letter directly to Packer.
Do you still have it?
I don't know.
I want to read it.
I could probably find it because I think you said
I emailed it to you. So
yeah,
it'll be in my Gmail. And I was like, and I hate how you use good, upstanding, moral men like Marlon Jensen to be your good cop and your bad cop scenario kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And it felt good to write. Then I sent it to, and everyone that I sent it to loved it. They thought it was great. And then I sent it to Glenn. He was just cackling, laughing. He's like, "This is the stupidest letter I've ever read."
Why is that?
Just because he's like, nobody's going to read
it. That's how you felt. I don't think that's exactly how I said it.
It's pretty close, the sentiment.
He's summing up.
So I totally understand this, like, because we all have this human drive to be understood.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're talking to a believer, it's just not going to happen. They're incapable of understanding our position. And it's infuriating because we understand 100% their position. And we want them to understand ours. And you went through all of these detailed, explanations of why you don't believe anymore and how it's immoral to be Mormon. And it just, it probably felt good, but totally ineffective.
I found it.
What you're saying.
Can we read it? Can we read it Smackdown style with Pete here?
You found the letter?
Yes.
Already? Wow, that was quick.
Go ahead.
Okay. All right. I'm going to forward it to you guys, and then we can do it. Keep talking, and we'll go.
Okay. So I guess I would say that there's a couple of factors that maybe should be thrown in here. We don't really have a relationship to speak of. So if I lose the relationship I do have, it's not much of a loss.
That's a big factor.
And there's the fact that I do want a relationship with my dad. I want a good, healthy relationship with my father. Something that I can say that I don't feel I've ever had. We've had a relationship of a Mormon father to a Mormon son. And then when we left, they kind of grieved us as dead. And then pretty much their whole mission from that point had been to get us back to being Mormon. It's like once you stop being Mormon, then the whole point of existence for somebody with a relationship with you is to get you back to being Mormon, and then you can be a person again.
That's to me that's the best. Like it's not all for me. It hasn't been all lollipops and rainbows since leaving the church.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not super happy, and this is well documented throughout our podcast. But the best part of leaving Mormonism is the relationship I have with my kids is not contingent on anything. It's not contingent. Like there's not this I love my child, but there's this tag or this thing that's tied to it with sorrow that they left the church. They could as close as my dad and I were and still are. The thought of me will always be tinged with a bit of sorrow on the fallen son,
Yeah.
And I don't have that with my kids. Like I just love them, love them to death. And no matter what happens in their lives, I'm going to love them to death, and there won't be any sorrow attached to it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a weird thing that they will grieve a child leaving the church more than they will, in some ways, the death of a loved one.
Well, the death of a loved one in the faith. If they died in the faith.
Yeah, if they died in the faith, they're only on vacation until you can go there.
They're not really dead. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think what I'm hearing from you, Pete, is that you really wanted to have a relationship with your dad that you never had. And
still do.
And you still want to have a relationship with him, and there's that love that is just kind of like an emptiness that then maybe turns to anger. I imagine that for me, there would be a lot of anger behind that. And so it's almost like your letter to him was kind of taking the things that are most important to him and beating him over the head with it as a way of saying,
in other words, you need another letter.
Love me, love me, love me. You know, like quit making all of these things so important in your life. Like, what about me? Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. Whether I go to church
in me might be dramatizing this a little bit, but
I can say that I wasn't yelling "love me" while I was writing the letter. But
no, but it's like so. I'm thinking about an experience that I had when I was probably 16 or 17 years old, and I went over and I spent the night at my friend's house, and my dad didn't want me to, but my mom told me it was okay, and he's like, "Well, then you got to help out in the yard on Saturday morning." I'm like, okay, yeah, I will. So I get up early, I come home. I'm just like, I stayed up all night playing Sega with him, with my friend. And, I wasn't ready to work in the yard, but I was going to, And I'm putting my shoes on the couch. I lay down. I fall asleep. I wake up in midair because my dad has come up behind me and just shoved me off the couch.
Holy crap.
And so I like land on the ground and I'm like, that kind of like cry. And I like go outside and I get the tools out of the tool shed. And then I see him walking across the yard and I just snapped. And I just like I never approached my dad. I've never been as angry with him as I was in that moment. And I just shoved him and I yelled at him, why do you have to be such a jerk? Why do you have to be such a jerk? And then I kind of like broke down in tears, like, why do you have to be such a jerk? Because I really just wanted him to love me.
Sure.
So I'm projecting that experience that I had onto your letter. And I'm saying it may be fair. It may not be, but that's what it's making me feel.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can honestly say I've never had feelings that strong. At least feelings of anger that strong towards my father. So, there was a bit of catharsis in writing those things, which I'm sure were biting if they were actually read. There was a bit of I would call it righteous anger at the way my dad wrote the letter and stuff. So. I think you guys are pretty accurate.
You ended it, or close to the end. You're like, it was your epilogue. It was like some quote about moving away from childish things. It was from the New Testament.
Yeah.
Was it Corinthians or something like that?
When I was a child, I believed as a child. I did all these things as a child, but now that I'm a man, I put away my childish things.
You basically called believing in Mormonism childish.
Yeah.
And but what I did like at the end was like your 3 conditions. Mm-hmm. Do you remember the 3 conditions that you put?
I don't actually.
Celestial, terrestrial, and celestial conditions.
There's no celestial.
Like if we're gonna, you put conditions on the relationship. Like if we're gonna have a relationship, we're not, it'll be mutual respect. It won't have an undertone of religious, differences. I don't know. Your 3 conditions were very reasonable. So I guess we're just in the business of giving advice tonight, Glenn.
Yeah.
If you really want a relationship with your dad, you're going to have to write a different kind of letter, more general, less specific, and more focusing on common history and love and that kind of thing.
I think that's easy for you to say though, Randy, because you've got a very loving father.
It's very easy for me to say.
You've got a very, very kind-hearted, loving father.
But I also understand psychology from all the pop psychology books I've read because I'm an expert.
Mm-hmm.
I took psychology 101. I'm familiar.
But you can't directly attack cherished beliefs and then expect a rational, reasonable response back. And I just think it would be a better strategy to build on common things. Just to have, he's not long for this world. He's had two open heart surgeries and a third heart surgery that was an open heart. Mm-hmm. How old is he?
He will be 65.
Oh my God, he's a kid.
Yeah, my mom was 64 when she died this year.
Damn.
My family isn't known for longevity. So
salute.
Yeah, I haven't had grandparents since I was 12, I think, when my grandpa died, my last grandpa. So we don't live long.
Cheers, mate.
So that's actually, I think that plays a part in my letter as well, because and maybe you guys are right, and I will definitely think about writing a follow-up letter. But I did actually see my dad at my mom's funeral last month, and
that's the only contact you've had since the email.
Besides him asking for money recently, yeah, that seems to be the only contact I get.
That's kind of weird.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I've changed the way that I feel about this, having heard you tell your story, Pete. So I don't think that you did anything that you should do differently. The way that you handled it was exactly the way that you needed to handle it, and for your own reasons. So I'm not going to say anything different than that.
Thank you, but remember, you're only getting my side. I'm sure my dad would tell you a different story.
Yeah, but your dad's a grown up. You know, if your dad wanted to I mean, sorry to say this, but if your dad wanted to have a relationship with you above and beyond that letter, he would be talking to you more than just when he needs money.
I agree.
And I think you know that. And so it's like, all right, I just got to accept it what it is, and beating him over the head with the childish things that have been a wedge between him and what, I don't know, like people who are actually therapists are probably listening to me going, what the hell is he thinking he's doing? Stop it, Glenn, stop.
That's the worst possible advice ever.
Don't do that. Don't say that. So I don't know, but all I'm trying to say, Pete, is that I feel for you, man. I definitely feel for you.
Yeah.
And I don't want you to beat yourself up at all over this. And I don't want to be a part of anything.
I think he's taking it in stride, dude.
Yeah, but look, he was raised in such a way that he feels guilt. I'm not going to add to that.
Seriously.
I don't want to add to that at all.
My wife would call me a powder.
Yeah.
when I do something wrong, I do beat on myself pretty hard. So
yeah.
So has the example of your dad, because I mean, it sounds like your dad, like when you, at first I thought it was kind of cold hearted. Like, yeah, I think you could have been a better dad, but we all could be, and then you followed it with, well, we all could be better sons. But you're like, yeah, I think you could have been a better dad. I thought that was kind of harsh, but now I understand the relationship. Your dad definitely could have been a better dad. So what I'm getting at is, have you used the example of your dad in your own life now that you are a dad?
Oh, for sure. I have 4 daughters. I'm constantly like trying to be a part of their lives. Hugging wasn't a thing in my house growing up. It was always awkward whenever a hug did chance to happen. But in my house with my kids, like, I feel like I may be too loving. I'm trying to overcompensate, I think maybe. But I definitely feel like I'm trying to not make the same mistakes so that one of my kids doesn't do the exact same thing I did.
Do you know anything about your dad's relationship to his dad?
I do know a bit. My dad's dad died when he was 12, 13.
Wow.
He doesn't talk about him much besides that. So, but my dad kind of took over the man of the house job pretty young when he was a kid. So I don't know if that has anything to do with it. But he has 3 sisters, and they all seem pretty tight, but I don't know what there's so many weird things. Like I could tell you, it wasn't until a few years back that I realized we weren't vaccinated. And that was only because my mom had said, see, none of you guys were vaccinated and you're all fine. And that was just a few years ago.
That's because of herd immunity.
Right. So we had thought that since, who was it? Benson came out and said, vaccinate your kids, that they would have done it. But some types of crazy trump other kinds of crazy, I guess. So that was a thing. Oh, and recently not recently, but a few years ago, my brother was dating a girl named Tara from California. And my mom goes, oh, be careful. Your dad has a daughter named Tara that lives in California. And I'm like, I have a half sister somewhere?
What?
And this was after we were all grown-ass adults. Just
be careful. That Tara might be your sister.
Who does that?
That's funny.
There's never been any mention of any previous relationship at all. Apparently, my dad had been married once before.
Oh my God! There was an entire marriage in your dad's life, and you didn't know about it. Oh,
I had no clue, and neither did any of my brothers. It was it's ridiculous. I don't know exactly. I don't know a lot about my parents' family. My mom apparently has 2 or 3 brothers. I'm not sure.
Also named Tara.
Just I can't.
We don't talk about them at all.
Yeah.
The Tara taboo.
So yeah.
So it's safe to say you have daddy issues.
Oh, totally. Wait, in what way?
I'm just not sure that your dad is worthy of trying to resurrect a relationship.
I would just be glad starting from scratch.
Yeah. Well, my heart goes out to you, Pete.
Thanks.
I do want to wrap it up for tonight, but encourage you. We've got other essay contests. Anytime you want to come on and talk or do anything like this, just let me know. Just reach out. I've enjoyed it, and how I'd like to end this one, if it's okay, is that we could do like a smackdown of Randy's resignation letter, unless there's any final things that you want to say or Randy wants to say.
I think that needs to happen.
Yeah. All right, here I'm gonna do a share screen on this. Can you guys see this?
Yep.
All right. So Randy, do you want to start since it's yours? And you haven't read this in, let's see, how long ago did you date it? You didn't date it.
I didn't date it. I resigned. I wrote because it was the 2010 when Boyd K. Packer gave his talk.
This was
This
was March 18th, 2011.
Well, I sent it January of 2011.
Okay. All right.
Well, you just made it really small.
Well, I'm just making it big again.
All right.
That's what she said.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
That's what
And I'm not going to be caught doing it either.
Caught by your mom.
Yeah.
Oh, it was the worst.
I don't even want to imagine with my mom. Ugh. All right. This is going to be hard to read. This is my wife's and my children's, Jonathan Lee Snyder, Lincoln James Snyder, and Grady Stephen Snyder, formal resignation from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and it is effective immediately. I
just loved that. And it is effective immediately.
Right.
Suck it.
Fuck off.
Suck it.
Fucking now.
It is effective immediately. And I love how formal you are with like, these are my children's full names.
Mm-hmm.
Suck it.
Yeah, like I gotta get all their names off the records, right?
Yeah.
I did the same thing, but I did it in 2015.
Yeah.
2015. Okay.
Yeah.
I hereby withdraw my consent to being treated as a member, and I withdraw my consent to being subject to church rules, policies, beliefs, and discipline in air quotes.
What? That's the commentary that it's not really discipline. What you guys call discipline isn't real discipline, right? Is that what you're
saying?
That's that's what I'm saying is like, fuck your discipline. It's not real.
Yeah.
It has no power over me. As we are no longer members, I want our names permanently and completely removed from the membership rolls of the church. I have given this matter considerable thought. I understand what you consider the air quote seriousness and the air quote consequences of my actions. It's really condescending letter.
Yeah.
I am aware
from your quote unquote church.
Yeah.
Your fake church.
I am quote unquote aware.
No, there's no air quotes on it.
Okay, all right. Yeah.
I know how air quotes work. Unlike our president.
Yes.
Oh God.
I am aware that the church handbook says that a resignation, quote, cancels the effects of baptism and confirmation, withdraws the priesthood held by a male member, and revokes temple blessings, end quote. And air quote.
I think I remember when you showed me this, I'm thinking the person reading this is going to be really impressed and go, wow, this guy really did know his stuff. Well, we really lost a good one. Really lost a good one, guys.
He's really making me think.
Just right.
Yeah.
He knew
He's really making me think. I also understand that I will be, air quote, readmitted to the church by baptism only after a thorough interview, end air quote. Do you want me to keep going, or do you want to take it?
Yeah, I want to switch around. So
right. Pete.
Go ahead, Pete.
Okay. Our resignation should be processed immediately without any waiting periods, quote unquote. I am not
going to overuse the quotes.
Laser. I am not going to be dissuaded, and I am not going to change my mind.
I'm a little disappointed that you didn't bold and underline and capitalize not in both of those cases. I am not. Like, I'm really not, you guys. Don't even think it. Don't even think it. I'm not.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be obnoxious.
Oh, right.
I expect this matter to be handled promptly, with respect and full confidentiality. After today, the only contact I want from the church is a single letter of confirmation to let me know that we are no longer listed as members of the church.
Why did you want confidentiality, and just like full confidentiality? Was it because you didn't want your parents to find out, or your dad, or Jen's parents?
They all knew by then, but
you just wanted to put more conditions on them.
Yeah, because we were already moving away. We were in the process of moving away from the ward that we left the church
that's
in.
right. Yeah, because you didn't want the people in the new area to. Yeah.
I didn't want my dad to know I'd resigned. Because there's some kind of finality that would kind of be a dagger in his heart unnecessarily. So I didn't want any of my family members to know I'd resigned.
Yeah.
There is some additional seriousness to actually resigning as opposed to just being inactive.
Right, because it's the same as being excommunicated, because now I'd have to totally get rebaptized and everything. But it's also kind of a middle finger. It's just it's such a formal gesture that it's more than just going inactive kind of thing.
Yeah. You had said that you did this because of what talk?
Boyd K. Packer's talk, where he said he says nobody's born gay.
Right.
Why would a loving Heavenly Father do that to anyone? It's okay.
Yeah, the previous October. Yeah.
People are born with spina bifida, but a loving Heavenly Father does that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Not that I'm equating
I'll
homosexuality with spina bifida.
I feel like
there's anything wrong with that.
State. Yeah.
All right. I'm going to continue with the letter.
Okay.
My story is a common one. I, over a series of several years, learned things about church history that gave me cognitive dissonance, and that they were vastly different from what the correlated, distilled, and whitewashed narrative the church attempts to pass off as its true history on Sundays. Period.
So do you see how I understood your email to your dad? Like, I understood all of the instincts.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So I had them all.
Yeah.
I suppressed these doubts. I suppressed these doubts because of a lifetime of effective indoctrination. Suck it. However, after the actions of the church regarding Prop 8 and 102 in Arizona, it became a moral imperative to really confront my doubts, as the church's position was not resonating with my instincts. After confronting these doubts over a period of about a year, I came to the conclusion the church is not what it claims to be. Not only that, it became obvious that the church leaders seemed to always be behind the times on the important moral issues, such as the civil rights movement, women's rights, and birth control, to name a few. I figured I'm doing all the work deciding what is moral anyway, so why not cut out the middleman?
That's if anyone's reading this. But it felt good.
I get it.
Furthermore, this process led me to embrace a more reliable epistemology, which is logic, reason, critical thinking, empiricism, and an empathetic understanding of the human condition rather than rigid and often thoughtless adherence to an authoritative body clinging with white knuckles to a central dogma which leads to intellectual suffocation.
Fucking pedantic douchebag.
As a result of my newly embraced epistemology, I know. Go ahead, look it up. I'll give you a moment. Look it up. Look up epistemology. All right, I'm back. I no longer believe in any kind of God.
Small g God.
Small
G, yeah.
Suck it. I self-identify, which means I listen to Mormon stories. I self-identify as an agnostic atheist, naturalist, secular humanist, and skeptic, which made going to church unbearable.
This really is a terrible letter.
Even so, I was reluctant to. No, it's not, Randy.
I think it's great.
No, I love that you wrote this. I absolutely love it, and yeah, I love you. Even so, I was reluctant to resign until Boyd Packer came out. He did finally.
He came out. Oh,
that
man.
was great. Wow,
Yeah.
Came out with that ignorant and insidious talk that was so bad that the church felt it necessary to redact. This talk, which was so lacking in any kind of knowledge of the evidence and so completely devoid of understanding, compassion, and critical thinking. He's too sexy for compassion, remember?
Anyway, yeah. Too sexy for compassion.
It became a moral imperative. I said that before, but I'm going to say it again, to cut the church off completely. Otherwise, I felt my association would ostensibly be condoning your position on homosexuality, which causes so much unnecessary suffering and pain.
Fact.
What is so troubling to me is that I see this immoral position the church takes on homosexuality.
The church doesn't take it on homosexually.
Homosexuality.
Homosexual positions.
Your homosexual positions make people like Marlon Jensen, whose natural instincts are to be compassionate and empathetic to homosexuals, still take the immoral position of the church out of a sense of duty and obedience. You are making otherwise moral people into bigots, no matter how much flowery terminology you wrap it into. I doubt you've read this far, but if you have, kudos. Please honor the above conditions. Regards, Randall John Snyder and Jennifer Lynn Snyder.
And we both signed it.
Did you get it? Did they honor those conditions?
So we moved to Missouri, not giving the address to any relatives, but somehow, some way, Jen's dad got our address, our new address in Missouri. And when I was in New York City, rooming with Glenn in a hotel,
Dylan just posted those pictures of the Book of Mormon musical stuff.
Yeah, so we went to opening night of the Book of Mormon musical.
Wow.
With the DeLynn crowd, and that very weekend, the bishop in our new ward, my father-in-law had forwarded our address, came to visit with his first counselor, and the only one that opened the door was Jen without me. And all he said was, "Are you sure?" And she's like, gosh. "Yes." And she said, "We're atheists." And that was enough to make them hastily depart.
And dust their feet off in the process.
The sign of the cross.
Yeah. And we have never been visited since.
By missionaries or anything?
The only time we've had missionaries knock on the door was just random tracting.
Okay. Yeah, us too. I don't know if that has to do with us leaving the church, but yeah, they don't. No one sent any missionaries over after we officially got our names off the records.
Yeah, and I've had moments with all of my siblings that challenged me to the point where they have no interest in sending anyone. Like, no one's forwarding our address.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they know that we've resigned, but they're certainly not interested. Like, all my siblings know my address because they send Christmas cards. No one's sending our address to subject any poor, unsuspecting Mormon
to your onslaught.
To meet my wrath, yeah.
Oh, I can just imagine that poor 18-year-old.
No, I don't fuck with kids.
I'm just kidding. And I get it. It's kind of sad though, right? Because I have a lot of friends who went on missions, who are now, they've left the church and they feel like 2 years were stolen from them, let alone the 10% of the income. But
yeah, you can't dwell on that too long though.
I agree.
It's not a productive thought experiment.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because when I talk to people who were raised in traditions outside of Mormonism, they have similar kinds of regrets when they look back on their life. Some people do, some people don't. Mm-hmm. But it's always interesting because I felt that mine were so unique and so scarring in certain ways that, if it would have been any other experience besides the one that I had, it would have been better. Yeah, not always.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's a good place to wrap it up.
Yeah. Led Zeppelin just.
Is that the outro?
I'll put the Debbie Downer.
So, Pete, I hope you don't think I was too hard on you.
No, there's a reason I wanted you to come on, is because every time I hear you on the podcast, I'm always 100% agreeing with you. So, okay, not 100%, but I agree with you.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's a little hyperbolic there.
Oh, come on.
But yeah, I mean, we both self-identify as agnostic atheists. So obviously there's a lot of things we agree on. We're both skeptics. So do you listen to the SGU?
I do. I actually did while I was still a believing Mormon, which may have been part of what helped me leave. So I love that podcast.
Did you know I was a guest rogue?
When?
July 6th, 2014.
Really?
I was on for the whole episode.
What were you? Did you win their contest or something?
No, I just offered them money to be on.
You won one of their raffles or something.
No, I just emailed them and said, I'll give you this much money if you let me be a guest rogue. And they didn't respond for like 3 weeks. And finally, Steve emailed me. He's like, who are you and why do you want to do this? And so I emailed him back my reasons, and he apparently liked the response enough for it, but he said he still wanted he and Jay to talk to me on Skype to vet me before I went on. And after about 5 minutes, he's like, all right, I'm good. You can be on next week. And we did a review of World War Z. We talked about crop circles.
I remember that episode.
I remember listening to it while I was mowing my lawn, and I was just so disappointed that you didn't mention Infants on Thrones.
and Glenn told me beforehand, you got to mention Infants
You got to
on
do
Thrones.
it. You got to.
And you didn't.
I couldn't, man.
I cared so much about stats back then. I'm like, come on, let's boost these stats.
Yeah, we got to get some of that SGU traffic.
Yeah. I go, Infants on Thrones. This Randy Snyder seemed like a rather interesting fellow.
Well, we recorded like 2.5 hours, and Steve edits the hell out of it.
Oh, yeah.
For content, and he got it down to an hour and 20 minutes. So there was so much shit I said that was edited out. He probably would have edited out the name of my podcast. But it was back in the days when Rebecca was on, the Skeptic, before she was replaced by Kara.
Yeah, I was delivering mail back then. I was a mailman before I was a software developer. So I was listening to, I subscribed to probably 60 or 70 podcasts. And I listened to the entire backlog of SGU while I was doing that.
You didn't notice the Mormon episode? Like the whole first segment was me describing leaving the Mormon church.
Did they have a Mormon or fiction at the end?
No, he wouldn't. I offered that. He wouldn't let me do it.
Oh.
Sad eyes, you are the only one whose blue skies are gray. So don't cry, you'll be the only one to make them go away.
Hello, I'm Peter Nixon. I guess you could say that my essay is on trying to have a relationship with religious family members after you leave the church. It gets a little complicated, I think, in a lot of ways. But let's start with, I guess, my history. I was brought up in a very Mormon family. Me and my brothers, 5 brothers and 1 sister, we were all homeschooled for our entire pre-college lives. The closest thing we had to regular school was seminary, which could be taken as an elective in the high school system here. We were taught all kinds of things like dinosaurs are just placed on earth as a test of our faith, that the Constitution was co-written by Jesus, that vaccines were bad. So bad, in fact, that it wasn't until my mother brought it up a few years ago that I realized that we had never gotten vaccinated, even though the prophet at the time had said to do it, that it was okay. Anyway, my parents have always been a bit controlling and have used guilt to try to get us to do what they want so many times that I couldn't tell you how many times in the last month she's dropped a guilt trip on me and my brothers. Anyway, me and my family, we left the church recently, a few years back, and we haven't necessarily been quiet about it. We don't try to put it in anybody's face, but we're not going to hide the fact that we're no longer religious. As you can guess, this troubles my parents immensely. Normally, they were just passive-aggressive, saying things like they'll get to know our kids in the afterlife, or some such nonsense, even though we've made no effort to pull away from them. And we still spend time with them whenever we're in the same town. We'll let them hang out and everything. We have made it a note, though, that they can't preach to our children. They can't talk religion with them unless my children bring it up first. So this all leads to the most recent incident and the crux of my essay. My father sent me a letter just before he went into heart surgery, trying to compel my siblings and I and our families back into the church. His letter reads, Pete, I have been meaning to write to my sons, especially you, for some time now. I have been putting it off because I procrastinate, not because I don't love you. Because of recent and coming events in my life, I really feel the need to let you know some of the things that are important to me, and I hope to you. I have always wanted you to be happy. Not the false happiness the world brings you, but the happiness that comes from the peace of heart you get from following the precepts of the gospel you were brought up in. I know you to be an honest, hard-working man. You have no idea how happy this makes me. I wish that I had been a better dad. Knowing what I know now, there is so much more I would share with you when you were younger and been a better example. Because God is all-knowing, He knows us and how best to turn us into people that are worthy to receive the highest glory with Him. This existence, this test, is not about what happens to us, but how well we respond to what happens. I love you and your family. I wish to be forgiven for causing you and your wonderful family any bad feelings. I am so sorry. Please accept my heartfelt apology. My desire is that you boys and their families can forgive and forget, and all of them join together again. We should all rejoice together on birthdays and anniversaries and holidays. If I do not survive my coming surgeries, please come together with your brothers and find a way to help your mother through her final stages of her illnesses. I know this is hard. I want to stay alive so that you will not have to do this, but there is a possibility I won't get my wish. I want you to know that I believe the gospel to be true and the only way to be happy in this life and the next. I know that Joseph Smith asked for knowledge and received an answer that has changed the world. I have come to understand why we need to be all in when it comes to our commitment to live as we know we should and learn what our Savior wants us to. We need to remove one at a time the things in our lives that takes the Holy Ghost from us. To keep the Spirit with us at all times is the only way to live up to our potential. Guiding your family with the Spirit in this journey is imperative. I know that one of the greatest attributes of our Savior that we should also have is forgiveness. I have also come to know that is not an easy thing, especially at times to forgive ourselves as well as others. The above was not meant to be taken as preachy, only as things that I have learned and hope that my children and their families will also come to know, and not wait for the end of our lives to figure this out. So that's the end of his letter, and this is my reply. It's a bit longer. Hi, Dad. I understand that your letter came from the heart and that you only have the best intentions. I understand and respect that. You should also know that I live my life constantly trying to do my best, trying to be the optimal person I can be. The undertone of your letter came across as, I know these things, you should know these things. I understand all of the things that you brought up in your letter. I just disagree with them. You should also understand that Heather and I talk at length with our kids on all of the issues that I'll talk about here. Not to bash anyone, but to try to facilitate understanding. We talk with our kids all the time about all kinds of things, and we always aim to err on the side of more information. If we're unsure about something, we communicate it to our children. If there's something going on with a family member or our relationship with them, we communicate to our children. Imagine how horrible our kids would feel if we didn't explain the situation with Sarah to our kids. They may just assume that they did something to upset her. They could end up feeling guilty for something they didn't do. That's just a for instance, but I think it clarifies Heather and my point of view on the subject. A little side note here. There's been a bit of a inter-family tiff going between my family and my brother and his wife, Sarah. We have told our kids that they are welcome to believe or disbelieve as they see fit, to join any religion they see fit after they're 18. One of the problems I have with the church is how much they understand the formative years of children and use persistent reinforcement of doctrine to train the brains of young children. I see this as morally wrong. Most Mormons would too, if I described the above to them, but ascribed the above behavior to some Muslim faith. As a skeptical thinker, I'm constantly trying to reevaluate the legitimacy of claims and rebalancing based on new evidence. I believe that it is my duty to ensure my children have the requisite skills to suss out the facts from the anecdotes, to differentiate from unsubstantiated nonsense and the legitimate facts of a thing. Heather and I communicate everything to each other, and we always know what's going on in the other person's life without secrets. It's worked really well for the 15 years we've been together. I say that here to ensure you know that this is not a one-sided thing, where I believe something and Heather believes another. Heather has read this and agrees 100%. I didn't say that to try to give you marriage advice. I suppose we should have had more conversations about this sooner, because I feel that there's some great misunderstanding. I'll start with the simple things. Family. I have no hard feelings against you, or John, or any of my brothers. I agree you could have been a better father, but that's true of everyone. We can all have been better. I could have been a better son, brother, husband, father, etc. I know you and Mom tried to do what you thought was right, even if I now disagree with what you thought was right. I'm open to friendly relationships with everyone, family or not, as long as there is reciprocal respect and effort inside the relationship. I am not going to place myself or my family in a hostile situation. So until certain family members can give me some reasonable certainty of basic respect, we won't be visiting or spending any of the precious little time we have on a one-sided relationship. As a person with a limited amount of time, not just on this earth, but limited ever, time is precious, and I'm going to spend it in the ways that provide me and my family the greatest amount of true joy and happiness. Family does not get a pass. Family doesn't have the right to treat each other like crap and expect friendliness in return. For too long, I placed myself in the situation of being around family members who feel entitled to my time and effort, and in return give me nothing but hostility. It's not right, it's not fair, it's not good, and nothing will be improved by my and my family's continued suffering just to provide narcissistic persons with human punching bags. And now on to the more complicated things. Religion. You need to read this as an honest account of my feelings. I intend no disrespect or offense. But since it is clear from your letter that there is a misunderstanding, to prevent future such misunderstandings on this subject, I'm going to be clear and hopefully exhaustive. First, I understand that the letter you sent was with the best intentions, that you are doing what you believe to be right, that you're trying to bring your children back into the fold. To be clear of where I currently stand, I like to explain my position as an agnostic atheist. It's a place I can confidently sit and be at peace. I do not disbelieve in any god or gods. I simply withhold any judgment on a subject until there is evidence enough to trust that such a thing does exist or does not exist. I don't believe that you could have done anything more to teach me about the LDS faith. We had early morning scripture readings before my older siblings went to early morning seminary. We attended church. We discussed gospel principles. There were even the irregular PPIs. I've read the Book of Mormon numerous times, and the Old and New Testaments even. And the Doctrine and Covenants and the Pearl of Great Price. I was all in for the greater part of my life so far, and had no issues with the church. That has changed, and we can talk about why if you want. The way your letter reads is almost like you think that I've had a flashlight slowly dimming to the point where I'm now fumbling around in the dark, unaware that I can't see anything because I've built up methods of dealing with the darkness. That I've lost some incorporeal spirit guide, and that is the only way to see through the blinding wiliness of the devil and those who followed him. And this is all probably because that's what you were taught, and have taught, and has been reiterated throughout your life to the point that you probably couldn't point to the first time that you had heard it. I know. As I've said, I understand the church and its teachings better than many who still talk to and are still in the church. We have a lot of Mormon friends because we're not dicks to people who don't believe the same way we do, or don't. I can tell you that the story you believe, the story you're told about people who leave the church, is about as far from the truth as why I left as you can get. I didn't leave the church so that I could go and live in sin. I didn't do it because it was easy. It definitely wasn't that. My children have suffered social persecution because of the decision. I didn't leave the church because it was too hard to repent. I left the church because it is immoral, it is wrong, it is full of untruth, unfairness, and groupthink. I won't try to convince you of my lack of beliefs. If you're interested, we can have that conversation. But only if you're as willing and open to being wrong about it as I am. Happiness. I've never been happier. Not the short-term happiness of a drug or a piece of cheesecake, but the long-term, lasting happiness that comes with living a moral life that I can feel good about, that I can openly and honestly discuss with people, and not have to hide behind an argument from authority or an argument from antiquity, like quoting a Bible verse. But I can have rational, reasoned discussions about morality from a morally defensible position, something that is not available to someone who uses the Bible and Book of Mormon as moral guides. The happiness I feel now is greater than I ever felt while living under the constant fear and guilt that the church puts on its believers. I do my best every day, just like I assume most people do, except when I do it because it's right, and I have no hope of a future reward for good behavior, and no punishment for bad behavior, either inside or outside of this life. Because of this, I don't rely on repentance, not in the religious sense. I try to live as though I can't take anything back, because it's true, I can't. No one can wipe my sins away but me. No one can make whole where I've destroyed permanently. Think about that for a bit. How much more care would you take with your life if you were walking the tightrope of life without the safety net of repentance? Which brings me to morality. Let's postulate that there is a God or gods, that there is an afterlife, that what you do on this earth places you either into the graduate program of life or down into the fires of hell to shovel coal. If there is a God that is worthy of believing in, it wouldn't be so small and sensitive about people believing in it. The truest form of morality and goodness is in people who believe they have no promise of future benefit for good behavior, and in people who have no promise of future punishment for bad behavior. Those who require the carrots and sticks to do the right thing are spoiled, immoral, selfish little bastards. So a truly moral God would give a moral atheist a higher glory than a person who knew about a future reward and a punishment and acted in their own self-interest. Because that person, the atheist, in the truest sense of the word, is moral. A truly moral God would also not punish people for eternity for doing what he knew they would do before they were brought into existence. Think about that for a minute. The LDS faith believes in an omnipotent, omniscient, and benevolent God. One who, they believe, before he created everyone in existence, knew which ones were going to go to hell and which ones were going to live lives full of unnecessary pain and suffering. Before their God judges them and puts them where he knew they would go before all of that. Let's say you did the exact same thing. That you brought a child into this world who you knew at age 45 you were going to place into a torture chamber where they got to live on for eternity in pain and agony. You knew you were going to do that before they came into being. You knew every action this child would take throughout its life, and it did some horrible things to innocent people, which are kind of caused by you because you brought it into existence, knowing exactly that it would do those things. And when you place it into a torture chamber for eternity because it did exactly what you knew it would do in the first place, that would be hugely immoral. And I would argue that the Creator in this instance would be the one who was more deserving of eternity in pain and suffering, and the child in this case needs some help. A truly moral God wouldn't let all kinds of atrocities happen. But that's besides my point. Morals are the same for us as they are for anyone else. If someone can stop an atrocity without any sacrifice, such as someone with all power, and doesn't, by lack of effort or intentional design, the pain and suffering caused is essentially their fault. If I stood by a lever that switched train tracks and saw that a crowd of people were on the tracks that a train was barreling towards, and knew that I could save everyone with a simple pull of a lever and everything would work out great, but did nothing, I would plead guilty to murder. If there is no God, then I will be resting in peaceful, unending oblivion, knowing that I did my best. If there is a God and he's not some fickle, selfish, jealous piece of sky crap, it will judge me by a fair measure. And in that case, I hope that we meet in whatever heaven there is. I have talked with my brothers about this and discovered that the letter you sent me was a slightly personalized version of the same letter you sent them. I have to say I felt a little disappointed that you would say something about how you wanted to say something to, especially me, but the same exact thing was in the other copies of the same letter. A letter copied to all of us would have been fine, but the false attempt at personalization causes your letter to seem less sincere and to have less thought and feeling put into it than if you had sent a group letter addressing us as a group. If you would like to continue having a relationship, here is something I would require from you. I require our relationship to not have constant undertones of religious frustration. I require a relationship that has equal effort and respect on both sides. I require a relationship that is not contingent on me agreeing with you about religion. I haven't, don't, and will never again agree with you on religion. And then as a postscript, I added the King James Version of 1 Corinthians 13:11. When I was a child, I spake as a child. I understood as a child. I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things.
Go away. Took a lot of tears, but how you had to find those sympathetic years, the ones you left behind. Took a lot of tears, but how you had to find those sympathetic years, the ones you left behind. And I'm gonna get you into the light.
Hi, this is Jessica from Salt Lake City. Sorry. I used to take care of the general authorities and the prophet's wife in home care as a nurse, which may or may not have contributed to my shelf breaking. Anyway, that's another story. You can comment on this episode on the website, infantsonthrones.com, and if you really like what you hear, give the Quorum a 5-star rating and write a short review on iTunes. I did. Anyone for the closing prayer?
bound to go your way.
Thank you for listening to Infants on Thrones.